Sending your kids off to college can be a bittersweet time with a lot of emotions I can't imagine. But our next guest can make the process just a little easier, maybe a lot. Please welcome to the show the empty nest coach, Jay Ramsden. Yes.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you all. Good morning.
Welcome.
All right, Jay, let's get right to it. You say there are 3 stages an empty nester goes through once the kids leave. So what are they?
Yeah, so the 3 stages are grief, relief, and joy. They're not linear. People will jump around between them all. But when you get to that stage, the grief stage, and Tori, I know you just lost your mom. Condolences there.
Thank you
You're
very much.
experiencing grief. You're experiencing it right now. You shared that as part of your journey.
Thank you.
And people can empathize and people can sympathize with that life transition.
Yeah.
What happens is in the grief transition, when kids leave, people don't have that same empathy. You talked about empathy right at the beginning of the show. People expect you just to have this joy, go right to joy. And that's not always the case.
Let me ask you this. That's such a good point. You got to check in on your empty nester friends. In your experience, what do parents or guardians struggle with the most right after they drop their kid off at college? What do you think is the most expected?
Well, I think the first thing is there's just this deafening silence at home. The energy in the house has totally changed. But I think it's the lack of or a loss of purpose is what most people struggle with. As a parent, you're involved in your kids' lives, mom or dad. And what happens is that stops 18 years, 20 years, the kids go off to college, they go into the military, perhaps they go right into work. And it's like you're getting fired from a job. It just ends. You see it coming. You know it's coming, but you never prepare for it.
What a perfect way to put this. I mean, you know, you're speaking directly to me. I have a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old, and college is right around the corner for 2 of my 3 kids. And, you know, it's I'll be happy for them, but I also know that they're becoming adults and it's going to hurt. So for parents that have kids going to college this fall, what should they be doing? What should I be doing in a few falls to prepare me for this?
That's a great question, Al. I really believe that kids prepare for college. They have a college counselor that guides them in that process. I think parents should do the same thing in parallel. Get yourself prepared. Start to think about what you want to do once the kids leave. And empty nesting happens. That empty nest syndrome happens at different times for people. Sometimes it's when the first one goes off to college. Sometimes it's when the last one goes. For me, in my case, it was when I moved both of my kids into their first adult apartments 1 week apart from each other. And that's when it hit me.
Wow.
And so it's different for each person. But the key is to get prepared. Again, we see it coming, but nobody prepares for it.
So let's say you've prepared and you're now an empty nester. I'm reading our YouTube chat as I speak.
Ooh,
Megan
read Julia's.
Alexander.
And did you see Julia's?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I saw Megan said, I must be stuck in the grief stage,
Yep.
occasional joy. Julia says it's like you expect somebody to walk in at any minute and it doesn't happen. What if they're struggling? Just like you said, Julia, what if they're in the middle of this and they're watching you? What do they do right now?
Yeah, so the very first step, usually when I'm working with clients, the very first step is to get a handle on what's going on in your heart and your head. That's how I frame it for folks. And that's really just sitting with what's happening in your emotions and trying to figure out what's underneath of that. So perhaps you're sad, maybe you're feeling a little bit lonely. There's lots of folks who are going through this alone, right? They don't have a partner or a spouse to lean on. And so the very first thing you want to do is really just sit with, like, what are the emotions I'm feeling? Is it that the kids are actually out of the house? Or is it something deeper, something that you don't know what comes next for you? Like you're sitting there going, what now and what's next?
I'm just so glad we're talking about it.
I think you're
right,
right, Sam.
And also,
Yes.
let's continue the conversation because becoming an empty nester can change a marriage as well. So what are the most common issues that you see for couples?
So I think the most common issue that comes up is we've lived kind of a life of parallel. Families will do that. They'll live in parallel. The kids are kind of in between, and the husband's doing one thing and the wife is doing something different. And we get to the end of that, and all of a sudden there's this huge disconnect, right? And usually it comes from a lack of communication throughout the marriage, that we're not talking to each other, not making time for each other. My wife, in our instance, we always made time to have a date night, at least once a month. And so as people are going through it, don't wait for the kids to leave. If you're noticing that there's a disconnect, start working on that now.
Great advice, Jay. Thank you so much.
Fantastic advice.
DBL Nation, you can find more tips on how to survive the empty nest years by following Jay on social media or checking out his website. Thank you again. We'll be right back. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Jay.
Thanks for being here.